Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue Podcast. Very excited for this episode today. Here with me, I have Austin Smith out of Newark, New Jersey. Austin, thank you so much for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Nah, absolutely, man. Not a problem at all. Thank you for having me along, being able to grace the platform with some of the other amazing guests that have come on, considering the fact that, these are heavy hitters. So I'm glad, kind of with the request that you saw I can provide some valuable content as well. So I appreciate that.
Absolutely, man. Everybody has some value they can provide,
That's a
for
fact.
sure. For sure. So first, I'd love to hear more about what your childhood was like and what you saw or maybe what you didn't see that shaped your view of building wealth.
Oh, interesting. And I talk about this all the time, all the time. This is a good, and that's actually a really, really good question. When it comes down to money, I'm telling my wife about it. I think there's the quote that you will make 10% less than what, or you're conditioned already to make 10% less than the highest grossing family member, right? So I'm not saying that that's a statistic or that there's any, fact behind it, but like the saying is. And I thought that was pretty interesting because, my story isn't a rag to riches. I didn't grow up necessarily in poverty. Standard middle class, a vacation here and there with the kids, nothing extravagant, nothing crazy, but then again, not coming from extreme poverty as well. Um, Parents weren't doctors and lawyers, like we weren't the Huxtables or anything like
Mhm.
that. Just two hardworking parents, decent salary, right? And, wanting to provide for their kids to be in the best environment, at least when it comes down to education and schooling and things like that. But the one thing that I will point out the most is that when it comes down to at least watching your parents, or at least with me watching my parents, they were excellent defensive players when it came down to money and when it came down to wealth. So they knew to buy a home, they knew to invest in their 401k, they knew to play into their pension, they knew that they would have those opportunities. No problem. It's just the fact that those were very, very defensive, which were great. It's just that they never went on the offensive as far as using the assets and the cash and the uh, wealth that they already had created to then expand into things that were either going to grow in value or provide some type of residual income or anything like that. That was the only thing. So they were great at defense, and that's why their household is stable. That's why in our area where there's a lot of gentrification on, they're chilling, right? So their poverty values and their wealth is just going up by the minute. So it's just that they also, as far as timeline wise, could have maybe put the gasoline on the fire and exploded the wealth quicker if they also played the offensive game to win the championship of money, essentially. So
Definitely, definitely. How do you feel like that impacted you as a kid or in your adulthood, as you took your own journey in life?
I'll tell you. So it's a popular, I don't want to say belief, but obviously conditioning where I thought, obviously, like most people, obviously we knew to get the job and go to college and things like that, but it wasn't that. It was, get a really good job, get a really good income, and you'll be set. All right. So, which is majority of our conditioning in the beginning. But what it did essentially is that it made it harder to comprehend big money. So when getting into real estate and you start to like obviously network and deal with people that are moving big money, you have to go through a mental shift first to allow you to one accept that. So now that I've gotten that, that's amazing. But going through that whole entire process, is it's a challenge because you're not used to seeing that. So if your parents are doing one thing, especially if you consider them, your superheroes and obviously people that you look up to and people that you were um, blessed to be in the atmosphere of.
Mm,
However, that atmosphere will condition your psychology or your thoughts or beliefs about money. Add to the fact that we don't have any immediate family members that are doing it on a huge level. People are doing great, no problem. but on a huge level.
Mm-hmm.
So you know, we didn't have that. So you go to a decent middle school, a prep school as a high school, and then you go to a state school for college. But obviously, we weren't putting ourselves in environments where, you know, people talking about making $40,000 a month was a bad month for them. You know what I mean? Where us, a bad month was if you couldn't pay the bills. So if you couldn't pay the bills, and if that's considered a bad month, then I just have to have a good month, meaning I just have to take care of my bills, right? So like when that's young, or if you're not seeing, not so much the luxury vacations or anything like that, but just the attitude towards money of, here, own this, or the reason why I do this is because of that. Um, that, you know, that'll stick with you whether you believe it or not. And
Mm-hmm.
then it's not until you get into atmosphere or energies or circles or networks where they challenge that whole entire belief, does that actually change internally for you.
For sure, for sure. So that kind of segues into the next question. So with that being said, you know, you mentioned your parents, they played good defense, but as far as kind of expanding the great ground they were building on, it kind of just stopped there. And you know, you also mentioned how it kind of, you know, impacted you as you got into different circles and things of that nature. So that
Mhm.
brings me to the question of, you know, why real estate? You know, why did you decide that, you know, you wanted to own a home and kind of grow in that direction?
I knew investment was always big for me. So I knew, you know, I majored in finance in school. So I knew eventually, you know, once I got into, you know, my late teens, I was very, very, you know, money conscious after seeing a few things, being exposed to a few things. So I was really, really kind of money conscious on what to do, what to do next. So I had that basic understanding, but in the beginning, it started off really heavily with forex trading, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And so the goal was to be able to work from wherever, pull in, you know, 70K on a trade and teach people how to do the same. So long story short, that didn't work out as planned. Forex trading is a lot harder than what it seems, but um, obviously there are people that are out there being successful. The reason why I didn't become successful is because I didn't beat on my craft the same way that I'm beating on my craft with real estate. Also, I was a lot younger, so obviously the tolerance for, or the lack of patience at that age, and the youth mindset of what it actually takes to be successful in any field, any craft, any endeavor, just wasn't there. So I was looking for something different. Obviously, I was at a job. It was my first job, first and only full time job after college,
Mm-hmm.
where I was working for a manufacturer that made LED lighting products,
Mm-hmm.
which was a basic entry level job, first thing out of college, just something that you can say that you have a salary and benefits, and something that every now and again you can go dressed up to work to feel important. Right? So that was cool, but obviously the money's not matching that, nor is what I'm actually doing matching that. So I had to
Mm-hmm.
find something different. And real estate, I remember a guy was talking, or I had a buddy of mine that was actually in the business who was talking about it. And I always saw myself, you know, being some type of agent.
Mm-hmm.
Like I would have clients, I didn't know how, but obviously I was going to be service oriented. So I knew it was gonna be in a service kind of industry because that was just the personality, the nature, kind of what I was used to. And once I got that job, it was great while it lasted, but obviously, you know, we all need more. So what's the next endeavor? And real estate was, when he mentioned it, I knew I was gonna get into real estate. I had no doubt about it. It's just the fact that I didn't know that I was going to then quit my job, go into being an agent full time,
Mm-hmm.
to then turning that into investments and things like that. But it all stems back to what I was originally looking to accomplish with Forex. So
Right.
now the passion is the same, it's just that the vehicle's different. And I have a spiritual component to it as well. But that's it. Um, you know, as far as directing the paths and things like that. But, you know, so that's when a lot of doors started opening, at least on the real estate end. But that's how I got into the business.
Wow, that's awesome. That's awesome. You know, I like the fact that something else took you there. You know, you had
Yeah.
what remained, and you know, we were still very early on, of course, but what remained true was the desire, right? So, you did the Forex thing for certain reasons, but hey, whatever, it didn't work out for you. And you're like, how can I channel this energy? How can I channel this ambition into something else? So I really like that.
Yeah, yeah. And because you'll know anybody that's listening, you'll know the biggest thing, right? I mean, the biggest thing is obviously your spiritual direction, but right under that is the passion that's inside, which can kind of go and tie into the spiritual aspect of it as far as the passion. But you'll know when you're in that right craft where literally everything surrounding your life now becomes uh experiences, lessons, and ideologies about how to make, your craft better. So once you get into that, where now everything is like, you're tying it into your craft, or how can
Mm-hmm.
I tie spirituality in my craft? How can I tie my friend's family into my craft? How can I tie my physical, exercise like into my craft, and just know, and then you start making these connections where, when you're really beating down on your craft, you work at it in all like aspects of it. So that's how you'll definitely know. That's for sure.
For sure, for sure. So can you walk us through your first purchase?
Yeah, at that point I was still, I was agent, well, still agent.
Mm-hmm.
That's the full time job, and then the investments keep the money coming in. Everything just gets siphoned right into the investments. But I was helping a couple people do it, and I was like, wait a minute, like when it comes down to numbers, I understand what's happening. I was always going to do it anyway. I always thought to myself, like, for my first property,
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm gonna buy a multifamily, I'm gonna stay in the basement, and I'm gonna rent out the other units, right?
Right.
So I already like knew, because, and here's another reason why, because one, after I graduated college, I was staying at home for a
Mm-hmm.
while with family. Blessed to say I have the opportunity. If anybody has that opportunity, you stay at home until you buy your first property, right? So staying at home, which for a single guy is okay when he's stacking and has a plan in place and things like that. When he meets his girlfriend that ultimately becomes his future wife, she don't want to hear that you staying at home with your parents. Rightfully so, completely understand. So we moved in together, and I'll never forget. We moved in together, and I remember paying rent the first time. Like, and mind you, it was only we were paying $1,000 for the studio, and we were splitting that. So it was like $500. And at that point, I had just quit my job to go into real estate full time. So I wasn't even like making a crazy income, but I
Mm-hmm.
had stacked enough money from while I was staying at home. That's one thing I will say. I was just definitely smart about using that opportunity to my advantage, because that allowed me to quit my job while having a safety net to say that if things went completely haywire, I'm good for at least a year and some change. Like,
Right.
so while young, where I don't have the responsibility of at that point having a wife, having kids, things like that. So I can take the risk. So while staying, I'll never forget. And she was cutting me a break, so thank my wife for that. So at that point, I was giving up $400, and I remember handing over $400 like for rent, and I was like, hell no. Like, no, there's no way that I'm gonna go from living rent free, regardless of the situation. I don't care, regardless of the situation, to
Right.
now paying rent. Like, that's out. So at that point, the plan was in place. Now, what I didn't also realize is that when you quit your job, banks do not like you at first. So when it comes down to lending, you are now considered at a much more higher risk than the individual that is on a W-2. So the only thing I probably would have done different is I would have bought my property first and
Mm-hmm.
then quit my job. However, it is what it is. I have no regrets at all. And at that point, uh, I couldn't get the loan. So looking at my then girlfriend at the time, who I think we both know and we understood like where our relationship was going, we decided to partner on the deal together.
Right.
So I found the property, we bought it together, we put the mortgage in her name, right? And I remember my attorney, like, do you trust this girl and everything like that, yada yada. And I just remember, just thinking in my head, like, one, we don't know what's gonna happen. That's the like reality of it. However, for the 5,000 or 6,000, whatever money like that I was about to put up versus the risk to reward ratio of like what I could have got back, it was null and void. Like even if it completely failed, some of us, not me, not, anybody, or some of us are regretting our degrees, and them things cost 40, 50, 60, 80, 90, $100,000. So God forbid I lose this money. I have a house that I had no attachment to. It's just cash, so I'm not hooked on any debts. And then the best thing that can happen is that I'm living for free, I'm making income, and then I wind up marrying the girl anyway, which wound up happening anyway. So like as far as the risk, like I could have cared less. I would have took that opportunity hand over fist to put down only 3.5% down, concession included, so we don't have to worry about closing costs. Live for free. By the time that you close, so if you close in the beginning of the month, so say if you close on June the 1st, your mortgage payment doesn't come out until August. So right off the back, if you can get tenants in at any time during June, that's straight profit. July, straight profit. And then your monthly income doesn't come in. Your monthly mortgage doesn't come in until that following month.
Right.
So right off the back, I've already accrued half my money before we even got tenants into the project. Before the mortgage even came out. So risk versus reward. So we put it in wifey's name, FHA, bought a 2-family, finished the basement, stayed in the basement, rented out the other 2 units. We were making about, I don't know, maybe $600 or $700 a month. 6, 7, 7, yeah, about that. So yeah.
That's
I try to go
really
nothing
good.
less than $1,000.
Wow, that is
for cash
amazing.
flow.
That is amazing.
Yeah. Living from rent free, changing life. And because she helped me, just with like holding me down, like while I was building the business, while I didn't have, I tell the story, I made $5,000 my first year, 5,000, or at least that's what I claimed on my tax returns. The gross was like 15,000. But no money at all. But obviously once you hit that bend, that's where real estate is a really snowball type of business. And it's once you're in the mix, that things like really start to pop off, and you're like, okay, this is why I joined it for sure.
Wow.
Yeah.
Something I want to make sure we don't pass over is partnership in multiple ways. So it's obvious you found the right person, and I think a lot of people may have had too much pride to have their partner on the loan because they're in a particular situation, in between jobs, what have you, right? But I think it's a really great thing that you saw the bigger picture, because on your end, you're like, you know what? I know I'm going to have a future with this person. Real estate is something I'm knowledgeable about, and I think would help us as a family as we grow into the future. And so you swallowed your pride, and basically day one, once you get tenants in, you're making income. And then you mentioned the cash flow you were making. And so I'm just thinking like the story could have been so much different if you didn't take that calculated risk. You know what I mean? So I think it's really admirable that you saw the bigger picture, and you didn't mind that, for now, this is just how it has to be done.
And to put even more of a risk factor on it, it was just the fact that like, and I don't know if it's the Gary Vee nature, but Gary Vee's like big on like, yo, dude, if you mess up, like what? Like when you really break down like what happens if this messes up or doesn't happen, like when you really break down the worst case scenarios, they're not that bad. They're honestly not that bad. And here's for everybody, right? And I have people that like are like cash ready, but won't pull the trigger because of whatever reason, X, Y, Z. Let me tell you something. I'll never forget, because it was such and to the testament, I'll never forget. It was my second, I was getting into my second year. So I obviously got through the first year, which at that point was a dud. And going into the second year, I had just started to get like, consecutive closings or kind of a back-to-back closing scenario. And I'll never forget, I had just closed on a deal. The check was like, I think $6,000. Yeah, I think the check was about $6,000 or so. And mind you, taxes have to come out of that, right? Because we get our whole check up front. So I think I put like $1,000 or $2,000 to the side for taxes. And as soon as I received the check, and mind you, this is one of like the first checks of the year. And you know, again, I still haven't had like built that business. It wasn't until like a little bit after that that we really like got into very, very consistent, great income. But that opportunity presented itself when I had just closed a deal, I had just made a check, and I turned around when I didn't like, I still didn't have like a crazy ton of money in the bank. I had depleted through a little bit of my savings. Closing when that happened, so I couldn't count on income coming. Deals are falling apart. This is just what happens in the business on a day to day, even if you're a $1 million producer. And the opportunity presented itself, and I literally took the same check that I had just got, put some money to the side for taxes, and then rolled everything back in to the opportunity. So, as soon as I got some money, I literally was without money again.
Right.
But it was for a big opportunity. Now, right now, there probably is $125,000 in equity.
Mm-hmm.
Now, still in for free. And once moving out of here, they probably would generate around $1,400 to $1,500 over so now, hell yeah, it was a good move. But it's always when I didn't feel like pulling the trigger or was like a little hesitant of pulling the trigger that I made the most money. That's for sure.
For sure. For sure.
Yeah.
That's amazing. That's amazing. So, what was it like for you two just being first time landlords? Like, was it tough finding tenants? Any horror stories? Like, how did that go? And also, how
Um,
long? What year was that in?
so we bought that in 2017.
Oh, wow, pretty recent. Okay. So yeah, how
Mm-hmm.
was it? How was it starting off?
So it was, our thing was we wanted to be landlords, but we wanted to also have kind of like an Airbnb, kind of service mentality. Like we didn't, we don't want to be slumlords. We want to do everything by the book. As long as y'all keep happy, like stuff breaks, we'll fix it
Hmm.
and we'll be good. Just let us know what you need. And we just want our bread before the 5th, or there'll be a late fee or whatever case. And we're good. No problem. Um, Here's what I did learn. One, be careful what you offer the tenant as far as appliances, because now you're going to be responsible for those. So, for example, washer and dryer, which for us, or me at least, I was like, yeah, we should offer washer and dryer. We'll be able to get more in rent. True, absolutely. Until you figure out what your actual purchase plan of the washer and dryer is, because 2 new sets of washer and dryers is bread. Like they're not cheap at all. Like a brand new set. And I was offering this for 2 tenants. So 2 sets of washers and dryers. Like, so obviously, spoke too soon, because at that point it would have ended up at about $2,000, $2,400 just in washer and dryer. Like, no, we're not doing that. And then, so because I offered it and because I made that part of the stipulation why we were demanding the amount of money that we were, I had to uphold my end of the bargain and find a couple of washers and dryers. So that led me to go on Craigslist or, Facebook Marketplace. I used Craigslist. The hassle of going out, you can't test drive or washer and dryer per se. Most of the time they're already disconnected and put off to the side in somebody's garage. So the hassle of going, looking at it, finding a way to then pick it up, deliver it, get it through the door. Okay, let's go find another set somewhere else for a decent price, for a decent price, so we can get the tenants what they need. Lo and behold, one of the washers doesn't work. Now all of a sudden the other dryer doesn't work. So learn my lesson just on the appliances, whether that's microwaves, stoves, fridge. Some state laws, depending on where you're at, they must have a stove, but they can bring their own fridge. Whatever you offer, just make sure that it's in the best condition, or that it's already there and pre-existing. So if you're thinking about doing that, just factor that into the budget. And then the only other thing I'll say is that when it comes down to repairs, always check, because I remember my tenant had a clogged toilet,
Hmm.
right? Landlord problem 101, right? Clogged toilet. So we're like, all right, no problem. And I was like waiting for this because I was like, I can't wait to not be hands-on when it comes down to making repairs, because I'm not making repairs. I got somebody on the phone that can handle these repairs. Here's what you need to know. You need to have a contractor and you need to have a handyman. There's a difference. And contractors are going to charge you contractor prices, and handymans are going to do the same as far as handyman prices. So I learned 2 lessons in that day. 1, have a handyman, and 2, always check the actual repair. If you're in, and obviously if you're in the neighborhood, I'm not talking about anybody that's managing property out of state. That's what you have a property manager in place for, most likely. But checking the repair, because she had a clogged toilet, she tried plunger in it, she did all that she could do, she did all these things, it's not working. Cool. Call my contractor, mistake. He leaves a job, obviously, that he's making a lot more money than coming in assessing a clogged toilet. He comes in, he plungers it 3 times, and then the problem solved. He charged me $100, rightfully so, because at that point I was paying for his time.
Wait, did you say he just plunged it?
He just plunged it. That's like that. That's what. That is the exact reason. That is the exact reason why.
I don't mean to
You
laugh,
need
but
to, like, and it's real though. But it's like it's real. And of course, the tenant's like,
yeah,
oh well, I thought I was doing everything. Of course, you thought, like, but
she probably just plunged it once.
yes, of course. But those were the 2 biggest things that I learned, at least in that day. Check your tenants' repairs, whatever they're mentioning, assess the damage, take pictures, whatever the case. But just, and try to fix it yourself. Some things, honestly, are fixable yourself. Whether you want to spend the time is another story. But if you have the time, some things are actually fixable. You'd be surprised, because these people that are doing their trades and plumbings and electricians and things like that, they've only been doing, it just way longer than you. But outside of that, they're a human just like you. And obviously they had to learn how to, uh, wrap black with green or whatever the case. I'm not doing any electrical work or no plumbing work, but any type of other like small work I can, try at least. YouTube University or something. Because if not, then you're gonna have to pay somebody, and obviously that's coming at your profit.
For sure, for sure. So,
Yeah.
do you offer fewer appliances now,
It's not so well.
or
Washer and
do you?
dryer, I definitely don't. It
Okay,
depends, and again, it depends on the property.
yeah.
So, like the second property that we bought, we didn't have, And here's another thing I learned: the second property that we bought, which happened to be right around the corner from the first, um, the seller actually left a washer and dryer in the unit, right, or in the basement. So I only offered it to 1 floor, and I was like, okay, listen, I don't know the condition of the washer and dryer. However, if you want to go use it, you're more than welcome to use it. No problem. Uh, so that's cool, except now it's just the fact that you have tenants in parts of the home that maybe you don't want them in per se, because whatever the case, somebody gets curious, somebody, touches something, somebody, like, whatever the case. So you got to like keep that in mind. But lo and behold, they kind of brought their own washer and their own dryer. Uh, you know, we noticed it on the water bill a little bit, but so those are the things that you got to pay attention to, because when you're
Yeah,
running your analysis in the beginning and you're like, oh, water should only cost 100, 120, and it comes out to 175 or 2. Again, it's just profit, but that's why you make the money off the buy. So as long as you increase that profit margin as much as possible, when those things inevitably happen, you'll still make out with a great profit.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
So talk to us about the next transaction. Where did things go from that first property? And you also mentioned it was right around the corner. So we'd love to hear more about that.
Yeah, it was and both these properties came off the MLS. These were,
Nice.
when prices were kind of rising. And just because, just me being in as an agent, I just had a specialized knowledge. It was like me being in the field, me being an investor, like I just knew what to do. I knew I was already helping a bunch of people do it. So it was just running, it's just numbers. Like it just was running numbers. So that property, so that at that point, at that point, my 2 years had finally kicked in. So I was able to get the mortgage, just being on the 1099. So I grabbed the second one, and I'll never forget. It came out in the morning. I'll never, I woke up, did whatever I did, And then right when I got to work, the first thing, which I was working from home, I pulled it up, I looked at it, I realized that it was around the corner. It was, numbers wise, price wise, bedroom, bathroom, like all of that, spot on.
Mm-hmm.
Walked around the corner, met the seller. I only saw the second floor. Did I see the third floor as well? I'm trying to think. Uh, Best case scenario, I saw the second floor and the third floor. Um, Worst comes to worst, I only saw the second floor. I don't remember off the top of my head, but I 110% did not see the first floor.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, let's do it. Let's wrap it up. Like, let's, walked back home, typed up the offer, submitted it. And I was like, let's like telling the agent, like, let's go. Like, let's like tell the seller we're ready to go. We can start attorney review today, because I knew that because it was on the MLS, it was gonna get into a bidding war. And I'm just thankful that I got it at the price that I did.
Yeah.
Just being able to move so quickly, because during that transaction, so we locked in the price, and we're going through the transaction. Comes time for the appraisal. We were all in at 275, with concession included. So we only have to worry about a down payment. Oh, and if anybody that has a license, obviously you're making a commission. Oh, that was another thing. Like, I made it like we were also making commission off of it, off the first property. So like the total down payment was like 10 or 12, but with the commission coming back all in, it was like 4,500 or $6,000 total between the both of us. So like, no
Wait, so
brainer, whatever.
you made commission off your own deal?
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk about that? I don't want
That's
I
what
don't
they
I don't want to
don't.
pass over that.
That's what
We'll
they
get
don't
back to
tell
it,
you.
but I don't want
That's
to
what
pass
they
over
don't
that.
tell you. Because at that point, one, I'm still only her girlfriend. I mean, I'm still only her boyfriend at that point. Two, I'm not going on the mortgage, or nor am I going on title. So technically, this is not my property. And three, as long as I disclose that I am an agent, there's no problem at all. Absolutely no problem at all. So for anybody, at least, and this is something that's crazy, because you can't. I think Brandon Turner from Bigger Pockets says it the best. Real estate is the only field where insider trading is legal. So you can find out the story of the seller, what's causing them to move. You can find out how much they owe. You can find out how much, what their situation is, everything like that. On top of it, if you're an agent, you can represent yourself as an agent. It'll be better to, I learned later, still have your broker do it. They'll still pay you the commission, but just have your broker facilitate it, just to keep it as arm's length as possible. But still, no matter what, as long as you disclose, always disclose, and not disclose. It's simple. Like, I am an agent. Here's what we're doing, X, Y, and Z. Because for the seller, at least for a listed property, you're gonna wind up paying the commission anyway.
Right.
So, like, it don't matter about that. And so yeah, you get a commission as well. So it lessens the blow of the amount of money that you're in, right? Like, as far as to take down the deal. So we're buying the second one. We're under contract. We do the appraisal, and we were all in at 275. The appraisal comes back in at 275. Cool, no problem, because I'm not, I only wanted to appraise for 275. I'm good with that. But then we find out it has an oil tank. We find out it has an oil tank. We find out that which for an oil tank for everybody on the East Coast, or I don't know if it's anywhere else, to be honest with you, but homes used to be fueled and heated by oil.
Mm-hmm.
Which was great back in the day, until we found out how much contamination that it can cause when it's in the ground and it starts to seep everywhere, neighbors' properties, into the water, things like that. So bad thing for oil tanks. So when that happened, the seller had to remediate it, but it took so much time. It took about 8 months to close that deal. And
8 months.
8 months, about 8 months to close that deal. And
Oh my
I had
goodness.
and you realize it after, but God really doesn't make no mistakes, because the city, Newark, was continuing to appreciate. So by the time after 6 months go by, you need a new appraisal. So we're ready to close, and the mortgage company's like, we need a new appraisal. So we're like, oh my goodness. So whatever. We had to bring out another, we had to pay them $150 to do a reinspection fee. We bring them out. The appraisal comes back $100,000 above are 275. It comes in at 375.
In six
I'll never
months.
forget. In 6 months. In 6 months. And we had there was a property I closed next to us that gave us a real boost, and it closed right in time. And the appraiser was able to use that comp. I'll never forget. Me and wifey was we was at the Bronx Zoo. I think I was on like vacation that week. I was taking off, or we were getting ready to go somewhere, and a mortgage officer calls, and he's just like, "Dude, your appraisal came back at $100,000 more." So I was like, "Yeah." And at that point, I'm like, "Yo, we need to close this deal now, because I don't want like anything else to like happen. I don't want like, let's get it closed." I remember the seller was like, at one point, was like, "Well, what the appraisal come back? Can we see the appraisal?" I'm like, we don't need to see the appraisal. We just need to close. Like, that's it. Like, let's just get it closed." So, it was a blessing.
Yeah.
It was definitely a blessing.
Wow. So you basically got the property for 100,000 under its actual value.
Yeah, but to point out,
That's incredible.
I don't look for that. I'm not looking
Right.
for appreciation. I only look for cash flow. However, I knew
Right.
with this particular property, and everybody knows when they're familiar with how their homes in their market are set up, but I knew I can add 2 bedrooms, because if I were to remove a dining room, keep the living room, and turn the dining room into a bedroom, tenants don't need a dining room. They're not using a dining room. It's not a necessity. You can get top dollar market rent without a dining room, no problem. So we convert those into 3rd bedrooms and increase the value. So I knew I was going to be able to at least add maybe, $40,000 or $50,000 in equity just by adding, 2 more bedrooms. But yeah, when it came back at 100,000, I was like, yeah.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
So you're at 6 now, right?
So 6 units. Yep. Six
Nice.
units. That was a 3-family. That one was a 3-family. So 6 units. We're under contract on another 3 units. That one we're
Wow.
just ping ponging. That one's in wifey's name. So now wifey's time is up. We're using FHA again. How? Because the original property that we bought in Newark, we refinanced that into a conventional loan. And you can buy and use another FHA loan in an area where it's considered an upgrade. So, for example, you're moving into a much bigger property. Either it has some better features that you don't currently have, whether that's a garage or a much more a bigger backyard. If it's in a better school district, if it's in a better area completely, you can use your FHA again. So we're under contract on another 3 units using our FHA loan. And so wifey's turn is up for that. And then we just started talks with an individual who has, check this out, it's 3 units. It's 3 units. The basement's finished and is an apartment. And he has an industrial sized garage where a scaffolding company pays them $1,000 a month in rent just to rent out the garage. So I met with that seller last week. I've been talking to him for 4 months. So for anybody that's listening, like when you are coming in contact with people who are thinking about selling, thought about selling, the fortune is in the follow-up. I followed up with him for 4 months, like, hey, we'll get together when COVID ends, no problem. I reach out to him on the regular. How's the family doing? Hope everybody's doing well. Just to let you know, I'm still interested. Just keeping that. I just visited him last Saturday. I walked through the property. Property is like, numbers are crazy. Like, numbers are crazy. So that would be my turn to purchase. Awesome. Now, I can't do FHA because that property is still in Newark. So I don't really have I might be able to say the garage, or I might be able to say, I don't have much to say. And personally, I don't feel like going into a competition with the underwriter about why, I need to be buying this property. For the one that my wife is currently, for the 3-family that we're currently under contract with, it's just in a much better area, just like night and day. They have never questioned me about anything. I've been moving through this whole entire process as if I never owned a home before, because they know that you're going from Newark to, and the place is called Bloomfield, but it's just a night and day area, no questions asked. So we'll see what happens. But I'm meeting him again on Saturday, and for that particular deal, what I would actually do is I would actually sell our second property, because what I want people to realize is that you eventually will have a return on equity, and most people will just focus on the cash flow that's coming in. So for example, when we originally were planning on buying the second property, FHA, 3.5% down, I think total was like 10 or 11 grand down, no problem. And then we were going to make, about $1,000 a month on it, or like average. So cool, no problem. It's just the fact that now, because there's $125,000 in equity in that property, even to play with easy numbers, if there was $100,000 in equity, and if you're making $1,000 net profit, which, we've made some repairs, I just replaced the water heater, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
You're making $1,000 a month net profit over the year, $12,000. $12,000 on the $100,000 is just 12% return on equity.
Right.
Not return on investment, return on equity. Your investment you've already made back. So you made great cash on cash return when it comes to that.
Right.
However, it just points out how that equity is basically the same thing as dead cash. So what I would do is the same $100,000 in equity, or in this case, $125,000 in equity. I would move that, take that $125,000 in equity, move that to the new property, right? This 3-family that has 5 income potential units coming from it. And my mortgage payment would be it would be about $400 for this 5 units. It would be about $400 more than the current mortgage payment at the second property. However, because again, I'm putting down, right? So even if you 1031 exchange, and if you get into that, ordeal, sell, like I would sell, take those profits, dump it right into it, tax free, $125,000. The equity is still there. Equity hasn't changed. If the market values drop, so what? It was going to happen at the second property. Equity stayed the same, but now instead, there's the potential for at max, $2,500 a month as far as net profit.
Wow.
Versus the $1,000 in net profit. And
Right.
that property is a little bit more in better condition. So when it comes down to maintenance and repairs, those will be less, which means I get to keep more of that income. So just like, we'll see what happens. But I'm meeting with him again. We've already talking about, me buying. So hopefully he'll let me, still purchase it. And but yeah, so we'll see what happens. But
So the future's bright, man.
as it should be, as long as I
Yeah,
keep God first.
for sure. That's man. What I really like about this is, and before, how involved is your wife? Are you kind of like the brains behind it, and she's kind of like, all right, what
Um,
is the plan? All right, this sounds good. Go. What is
yeah.
that relationship like?
When it comes down to the visionary, right? As a visionary, um, and wifey's the backbone, right? So in that particular case, she just understood, and she's like, so she was, like I said, when we were talking, she's from Inglewood, she's born in LA. After school, she moved over to New York, finished her master's. We wind up meeting in DC, and then lo and behold, she winds up moving to Jersey, and then we wind up moving in together. So adaptation wise, uh, she's very good at that, and she's very accustomed with things not going with how the picturesque version of it. So in this case, meeting me, I was talking about it so much that it was like, listen, not in a disrespectful way, but it was like, I'm going to do this, like, regardless of the fact. And I just think that, it just made too much sense not to do. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like when you explain the benefits, things like that. But she also just, and again, just from a spiritual nature, that's why, she's my partner in particular, because I realized that every person, whether male or female, might not have the original goal of finishing the basement, staying in the basement, like, colder down there. Like, we went through some things down there. So not everybody would be on board for that per se, but they would, trust their particular spouse's vision. So, I got to round it down on that aspect. So that's probably the biggest attribute. But once we cracked the first property and it was like, oh, okay, like, just let me know the numbers that are like I manage like both of our funds when it comes down to the investing. It's like she's completely on board because obviously we're doing this together and this is for the family, and uh, I've already proved the benefits. You know what I mean, through thick and thin.
Sure.
So
Man, that's powerful. That's powerful. I really like the
she
fact that
runs the books. Like she runs the accounting aspect of it. Um, Things are pretty easy, because it's we only got a certain amount of units, and even like if we grab these two next ones, um, managing wise, the properties run themselves as long as you put proper tenants in place, and if you're buying properties that don't cause you more repairs, properties are going to run themselves, right? So, but once after a certain point, we'll really get into a real uh, operational, we'll really have to like focus on operations, and that's what she'll be a part of it, because then eventually we don't want to be attached to it at all. But at the same time, we don't necessarily want to hire a property manager per se, because I can still get tenants in like I do, and I would rather do it, and I do it for clients. I do it as an agent. I'm still definitely going to do it for myself. So it's not so much that. And when it comes down to repairs, we're not doing the repairs anywhere. We're calling and da 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 da. And we have our team that will go and do their thing. But, there are other operations as far as the accountants, the books, managing expenses, the taxes, making sure those things are in order, tenant files, tenant requests, tracking the ROI on the property, making sure that things are straight. So we'll get more into that later, because my strength is just closing the deals, and her nature more operationally, and her nature is she's much more of the operations.
that's awesome. And what I like
Yeah,
about that is, once you two get to a place where, maybe you hire somebody in-house to take care of certain parts of it, you've already done everything. So you
right.
know what your expectations are, you know what things should be. Yeah, I mean, I just think that partnership you two have is so key, and for anybody out there who is looking for a partner perhaps and is interested in real estate, this interview is something you may want to consider. Just when thinking about if your goals might match with whoever it is you want to be with, man. Um, wow, that's really cool. You definitely have to keep me updated on how those two upcoming deals go. That's
Oh, trust me, you like lo and behold, man, you'll see it all over the gram.
I
But
got to check that out.
more importantly, we're just trying to just follow suit. Just
Yeah,
follow suit. Take idea into action, and then action into results. So we're just following it step by step, and this is what it comes with. It's nerve wracking because
yeah,
real estate is one of those things where it doesn't give you the immediate satisfaction of like a seller saying yes and then you closing the deal right then that second. It got to go through a whole process. It's a relationship. We're moving, at least in my market, at least a couple of hundreds of thousands of dollars. So it's it doesn't happen as quickly. So the nerves and the anxiety will rage through when you definitely want to make a move on this property, and you're just hoping that obviously everything goes straight. But it is what it is. But to your point, when it comes down to partners, definitely, I'm blessed to have a spouse that way. However, when it comes down to spouses and everything like that, let your spouse be your spouse. It is what it is. If y'all happen to join in that aspect, cool, no problem. Obviously, it'll benefit if you join in some like-mindedness when it comes down to the vision of the financial stability of the family. But aside of that, mine just happens to be my spouse. But this is for anybody
mm-hmm.
that you know this is just a textbook example of teamwork makes the dream work. If you want to go, fast, go by yourself. If you want to go far, go together. It's textbook. That's all, man.
For sure. For
Yeah.
sure. Couple more questions. So one thing I want to talk about is the Newark market. So as I mentioned, one of my close friends, he just closed on a property over there, and I've spent, the last couple times I've been back east, we've gone there. During this closing, I was there for his inspection and all that stuff, and we walked around a lot. And you can just tell like things are changing.
Mm-hmm.
It's one of those intangible things. Like you see new buildings going up, you see
Right.
the the visual of it is starting to change, and that's how it starts, right? So can you talk more about the Newark market? I know you're in it as an investor, of course, but also as an agent. So can you talk more about what's happening and where it's going in the future?
Yeah, it's the shock waves of everything that's happening in New York, and for anybody that's listening, when it comes down to like even choosing the target market, you usually have your metropolitan area or a major downtown area, obviously, and then it trickles, outward simply. So for Newark, where you have certain cities that, so the first group of cities that's right across the border from New York, Hudson County, where you have Jersey City, Hoboken, some towns, they exploded right off the rip because it's right off the train line for commuters. So Newark is just a town that is receiving a lot of that attention from investors, especially investors that are coming out of Brooklyn and other parts of New York. Obviously, Brooklyn's a main, a main player, a very key player. Where now they're finding New Jersey's prices, which a lot more cheaper. So they've bid it, they've bid up, they've come in here, they've obviously have turned ugly homes beautiful, gets the city getting tax income from those properties back on its books. And then at that point, because it's 20 minutes away from New York, when it comes down to a downtown area, now everybody wants to work where they live, right? So nobody would have no problems with a 20-minute commute into New York. So now you create that environment for development of businesses and residential units. And it's just the shock waves of what's happening pretty much in most of the parts of the area or most of the parts of the country where they're seeing a lot of gentrification in that aspect. But again, it's just about being on the right side of gentrification and trying to take advantage while it is coming in.
Yep.
Because the reality is today, not tomorrow, not next year, not next month, not forever, today is that, and it's safe to say that majority of the people that are investing in these communities are obviously people that are not from these communities, no problem. So when that happens, it's obviously taking your community and taking the funds that are coming from the outside community as the fuel for your money inside the community. So in this particular case, Newark is just just a prime example. We got multiple train lines, multiple means of public transportation into the city that can get you in there quick. And this is Manhattan, like epicenter as far as jobs. The New York Penn Station, where from there you're hitting all the boroughs, whatever you need to go. But it starts with getting into New York somehow, at least if you're in New Jersey. And Newark is just one of those places, especially because things were cheaper. Now they're a little bit more expensive. But Newark is on the rise. Some people think that's going to be the next Brooklyn or Queens or whatever the case. I used to feel the same way, but at this point, I'm just calling Newark because Newark will just have its own characteristics. It'll appreciate in its own time, but definitely going forward, Newark's not in the long run. Newark would definitely not be forgotten about. And a lot of the commotion and a lot of the real gasoline started pouring on the fire when Amazon had, its discussions about opening up its second headquarters in Newark. So that definitely, and if Amazon's talking about that, then obviously, we have plenty of big Fortune 500 companies that are here and they're just feeding off of it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It's amazing, man. Wow. This has been a really great interview. I think what I enjoy most about it was just how strategic you've been the whole time. Think about it. Just starting from receiving that first check, right? First check in the beginning of the year that you put towards the down payment. And every step from there, you've been very strategic. You've been very calculated with moves. And of course, you learned along the way. You had lessons and stuff. But I think it's just it's very inspiring just to hear the progression of things and also to talk about where things are going. So, man, I can't wait to see where you go in the future. And, I think it's great. You have a great partner and great business partner who happens to be your spouse. But I think it's just also a testament to partnership, whether it's with a friend, whether it's with a spouse. There are a lot of principles that can be taken from this interview that can go towards any business partnership when it comes to real estate. So I appreciate you coming on, man. It was great chatting with you.
Nah, absolutely, man. And for everybody, it's reading all the books so you find out before, and then when when you're reading all the books, digesting all the content, you know what I'm saying? Like your podcast, anything that you're seeing on social media, when you're digesting all of that, they start to become you and they start to become second nature. So you find out how to potentially set things up based off of what you learn and what you can, what you can do. So, the last thing I'll leave people with is that, when it comes down to funding your deals or whatever the case, even if you use a line of credit or a credit card or, whatever the case, using your credit, because this, the third property that we're purchasing, which is the reason why I love off-market deals, or deals that I can interact with just the seller, just me and them. I can, we can come to a better price, we can come to better terms. That one, hopefully, he's actually allowing me to roll my commission into my mortgage, which is a good and bad thing. We'll say that for another episode. But lo and behold, I may be able to get the property, not so much scot-free, but without any money out of pocket.
Mm-hmm.
We'll see what happens. But if not, then, I also just got a line of credit, a home equity line of credit. So anybody that has equity on their homes, go get a line of credit while the banks are offering it, during this whole COVID madness and things like that. Because they gave me 35,000, I think. They gave me 35,000 as line of credit, 3.25% interest. And if I need to cut the check from there, I can cut the check from there. And, that's one property buying another. But it didn't start that way. It's always one step at a time. It comes with all the emotions of, is this going to work and everything like that. But all you have to do is just, do the action, and then the results will follow.
For sure, for sure. Lastly,
Yeah.
where can people find you? Where can people find out about your podcast and everything you're doing, or connect with you if they want to talk more about investing in Jersey?
You can find me on IG, Mr. Mr. Austin R. Smith. You can check out the Austin Smith Real Estate Podcast, which, similar to this podcast, is just looking to tap into the insights and bring that straight to the environment, because obviously this isn't something that's taught in college. This isn't something
Mm-hmm.
that's taught mainly throughout our families or anything like that. But we also don't want to make it a sexy conversation, right?
Yep.
Real estate investing is one of those, like, it's very, very sexy dinner talk. Like, oh yeah, I want to get in the market. Oh yeah, I want to own some property, things like that. It's very, very sexy, but we
Yep.
want to break down like what it actually is. How are people doing things? What, meaning behind it? What happens if this happens? Strategy, maintenance, all the concepts that go around it. Because obviously, as you can tell just from people in 08, people lost their shirts. And obviously, real estate is things that, you are responsible for. And God forbid, luckily I'm blessed that my tenants had paid during COVID. And we showed them some love. We gave them for Mother's Day. We showed love. We gave some bottle of wines for the moms, and then for the guys that we have as tenants, just left them I think it was a bottle like Johnny Walker or something like that. Like, go ahead, enjoy. Thank you for paying the rent on time and things like that. And they loved it, and that's what it's all about, like having that respect. Because there was one story where somebody had like a 15 unit or 20 unit building down in like Texas or wherever it was, and like all the tenants conspired together during COVID to like not pay. And Lord knows where her mortgage payment, Lord knows where that's at.
Mm-hmm.
So these are real things that can happen. I mean, obviously COVID was a black swan, as far as like an event, but these are things that can happen. So but we want to bring that content to you. Your platform, honestly, I tip my hat off to your platform, because you're really
Thanks,
out
bro.
here really, really, really promoting. You have an awesome following just when it comes to that.
Thank you, bro.
So just take that platform and just continue, and now we're going to be relying on you to continue to elevate, because eventually, not to say that the tip strategies and insights are going to be tapped out, but we're still going to be evolving, developing. What's next? How are we adjusting? So, we're going to leave that up to you. So you got big shoes to fill, but, we're counting on you for that.
Appreciate that, man. Appreciate that.
That's
And
all love.
definitely thank you again. Thank you again, man. And thank you to everyone. Thank you all for listening to another episode of the Black Real Estate Dialogue podcast. You can follow us on Instagram at Black Real Estate Dialogue and on Twitter as well at Red Podcast. at BRED Podcast. Look forward to talking to you all soon.